Hello, Anon. You know, and I know, that the EU hates you, and would rather that you don't have the opinions that you have about certain things, certain projects, and the trajectory that Europe seems to be going on these days. And they have solutions for that, and we'll talk about them in a moment. But before we do, let's talk about a bit more about that wonderful knowledge that you hold and how you can enhance it with the 4th issue of Islander magazine. This one, the theme is Fellaheen. It's about how really civilizations can crash out after their winter period and lose memory, right? It's about losing memory of what made you great, what led to you thriving in the first place and being a successful society. So there's loads of really erudite thinkers writing essays for this magazine. You've got Morgoth, you've got Will Tanner, you've got Ed Dutton.
You've got Luca Johnson.
Yeah, I wrote one about the Lord of the Rings. I'm like, yeah, I can just map Spengler onto the Lord of the Rings. And it was quite a challenge, but kind of got there. Anyway, let's start talking about the EU. So, if you want to buy Islander, it's $14.99 on the website and
global shipping.
Yeah, but limited time while stocks last. So go and buy it now. All right then. So you have here this wonderful post from the EU that they put out.
Actual schizo posting, are they?
You see, the more you repeat it, I assume the more true it becomes.
It reminds me of Jack Torrance, The Shining. Said, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yes. So, as I say, the European Commission, independent free media stands at the core of our democracy. I am so sick of the words "our democracy."
Yeah, American politics has sort of ruined that for us, hasn't it?
Well, and EU politics as well.
Oh, blimey.
Just Western politics. Anyway, today, the European Media Freedom Act starts applying, designed to strengthen media freedom, independence and pluralism within the EU. And you can see here that they also had there's a link and where it told me that I could go and find out more. So I did. And you can see here, they go on to say that free media is a key pillar of every democracy, and they are essential for a healthy market economy. On a global scale, the European Union remains a stronghold for free media, setting a standard as a democratic continent.
You're pulling my leg.
That's what they say.
When did the EU have a comedy division, eh?
Oh, honestly. Yet, there are increasingly worrying trends. Building on past efforts, the Commission has taken a number of measures to protect media freedom and pluralism in the EU, in addition to enhancing free movement of services. So, as always, the technocracy, the bureaucracy, has our best interests at heart, and we'll start to explore some of the ways that they're going to do that.
And as always, they don't have a mirror.
No, they never come to the conclusion of why don't we just get out the way?
Or are we the baddies?
Are we the baddies? Yeah, exactly that. So it goes on to say that the legislation is aimed at defending democratic values by fostering, this is great, the sustainability and visibility of trusted editorially responsible media and news content.
You shouldn't trust any media, full stop. You should never take anything at face value, you know, and I'm saying that about what I say as well. Please don't just take it at face value, you know, look it up, check it, fact check it if you wish. That's good practice, generally speaking.
Yes, definitely fact check everything that Josh is about to say in his upcoming segment.
Well, that is facts, I'm afraid.
But haven't they just, you know, from the very beginning there, no, it's about protecting the trusted sources, right? It's about all the legacy media throughout the continent, you know, in France and Germany and all the rest of them, right? And it's obviously going to be used as a weapon to bludgeon and force into submission all of the new independent, you know, privately owned media companies that are popping up across Europe now, and the independent journalists as well, who quite frankly do all the heavy lifting these days.
Enough patting yourself on the back.
Well, no, I wasn't thinking about that at all. I was thinking about the...
We are the pillars of civilization.
Yeah.
Yes, without us, everything would crumble.
I was more thinking about just, the people like going out and filming the migrant hotel protests and stuff like that. The stuff that the media doesn't want you to know. Those sorts of things. So
look at the journalism they took from us.
Right.
Yeah.
Or are trying to take away from us.
Yeah.
Indeed. So it didn't, of course, take long before we got to the nub of what all of this was about, which is it's a perfectly legitimate word. You can say nub, Stelios.
I think it's the accent. It makes it sound like you're saying something else.
well, I'm sorry. I'll try to do better.
Oh, well, thank you.
Right. So, Article 3. Member states shall ensure that journalistic sources and confidential communications are effectively protected. Member states shall not take any of the following measures. Okay, a good start here. Let's go to B. Detain, sanction, intercept, or inspect media service providers or their editorial staff, or subject them or their corporate or private premises to surveillance or search and seizure for the purposes of obtaining information relating to, or capable of, bloody hell, they could do with a few full stops in this, couldn't they? Or of identifying journalistic sources or confidential communications, or detain, sanction, intercept, or inspect any persons who... You get the idea.
That is the longest sentence I've ever heard.
Yeah,
it would have been a lot better if it was like detain, sanction, intercept, migrants. No, it's journalists. Okay.
Yeah, and you can do that. But as it says there, member states shall not take any of those following measures, right up until we go to point 4, where all of a sudden we can see that, well, by way of derogation from paragraph 3, member states may take a measure referred to therein, provided that it is provided by union or national law, is in compliance with Articles 52.1 of the Charter, and here's C, is justified on a case-by-case basis by an overriding reason of public interest and is proportionate.
And this is the line that has been circulating, isn't it? Because, of course, justified on a case-by-case basis and public interest, that's like doubly subjective. It's just like, yes, we very much want to have our cake and eat it too here. We want to appear like we're this nice and noble institution that protects journalistic integrity, but actually what we've done is given governments basically the power to silence whoever they like, because anything can be justified by public interest. I mean, whether it's legitimately in the public's interest or not is a different thing, but that is so subjective as to just invite tyranny.
Absolutely. And if there's one thing that we've seen ever since that glorious revolution of 2016 and Brexit, was the fact that, of course, the EU didn't take that defeat and use it to be introspective about the way they were governing things. That such dissatisfaction had emerged in Britain about the European model and just who has sovereignty, right? Where does power lie? Who has the power to decide their own destiny? And all these sorts of things. No, every step they've taken ever since 2016 has been further down the rabbit hole of every grievance that Eurosceptics had about the EU in the first place.
So the EU isn't functioning particularly as a democratic institution. So
no, these are just words.
These are just words. And this is also just word, because frequently we can look at documents and they do make sense in the abstract. The question is, how are they applied? I think that the main problem with the leadership of the EU right now is that they think that there is one and only one problem, which is basically Russia.
And populism.
And populism, yeah, but they are linking it with Russia.
They're trying to argue that they're all Russian funded, aren't they?
Yeah.
Which is just as spurious as the Donald Trump Russiagate stuff.
Or let's say Putin's Russia. Let me put it this way. Now, let me be very clear. I think that, to a very large extent, there is an attempt to influence Europe negatively from Putin's Russia. I think there's no doubt to this. But the problem is that the same issues that are problems on that front are also problems on other fronts.
Of course.
And they don't understand this. So, for instance, I'll give you two very quick examples. The only border in Europe, the only European border in Europe where the EU is, within quotation marks, far right about, is the border between Poland and Belarus. If you focus on the language that they're using about that border, they're saying everything everyone else says from the right about borders in general. They're saying Putin is using migration, and also Lukashenko both of them are using migration as a method of hybrid warfare.
That's actually true, though, isn't it?
Yes, it is true. The point is, why do they selectively say, no, this is the only border for which this is going to apply, and all the other borders are going to be open? So that's one thing. And the other bit is, I'm asking people, for instance, who are in Greece, who are really close to me, and they're smart. I'm not saying I'm asking, what is your issue with Putin's Russia? And they're going to give me a list, say X, Y, and Z. Right, I'm asking, okay, can't you understand that the same thing comes from other areas as well? That's not the only problem that the EU is facing. And that's when most of them are beginning to think. That functions as a sort of the beginning of a rabbit hole.
Indeed.
Who are the men that pick for scraps amongst the ruins at the end of history? You should know, because you encounter them every day. Between the towering buildings of a fallen empire, we find the Fellahin, the historyless men, who know nothing of the turning of the cosmic wheel and find themselves outside of civilization itself. Cut loose from the great chain of being, they represent the loam into which our dying culture will return. That is, unless we choose to take up the burden once again. This Fellahin condition is the subject we explore in issue 4 of Islander magazine, on sale while stocks last and available worldwide at shop.lotuseaters.com.
The onion of deception.
Yeah.
So, as I say, the problem that we have here, of course, is the fact that it's so transparent that this is just a new power, of course. It's voted to itself. And, of course, because it's the EU, it has to have an entire another body of quangos set up in order to operate it, who are all elected officials, of course, from across the member states.
There's a very good phrase that you can't legislate freedom. You know, in many ways, freedom is the absence of legislation. And so you look at this and you think, hang on a minute, how can you make the press free with a law? How does that exactly work? You're protecting them from the government at best, perhaps, but then also it gives domestic governments power as long as it's not inconsistent with EU law, which, as we've seen here, is pretty subjective.
Well, as we say, they're making their press free. Their trusted press is going to be free, and everyone else will simply have to tread on eggshells. So then you get, this is, from what I understand, actually an older video now, but it's a perfect case study for the sort of thing that happened. So in Finland, Ursula von der Leyen gave a speech as she praised Finland for being a democratic country where people are free to express themselves, and saying that in Moscow, a protester would be arrested within minutes. Just
now
as
it's within hours. It's within hours.
No, it's actually...
And first of all, to those who scream and yell here so loud, they can be happy that they are in a free country like Finland, where the free speech is a right, where they have not any restrictions. If they would be in Moscow, they would be in jail in 2 minutes. Thank God we have a democracy. Thank God we have free speech.
I'm so sorry about that, Josh.
My poor ears.
So
Hopefully it wasn't as bad for you.
That German aggression was coming through.
Hopefully it wasn't as bad for you at home, but my poor ears, they're still ringing.
Well, you get the point. And that chap in the audience, he was fined €110.
That sounds like freedom to me.
Yeah, just for heckling.
It's the freedom to be fined.
Saying that he disagreed. And it was for harming a public official. So
He looked so harmed.
Criticism.
He carried on talking while it was all going on.
criticism is the worst form of harm that an EU official can take, frankly.
I have a migraine now. So
I'm so sorry. I'm very, very sorry. So then you have, I'll be cautious before I play this about the volume now that I've spooked you both terribly.
It'll be all right.
But it's also, you have here, of course, within the EU, as far back as, back when we used to participate in, remember that time when we used to have European elections in Britain?
I do, yeah.
That far off past now.
I even voted in one.
Yeah. Yeah, I voted in one too. And invariably what would happen is we get a load of UKIP MPs just sort of shouting and jeering from in that venerable chamber right there in the European Parliament. But what does any of it really matter? Right? Does any of it really matter? Yes, you can elect them, but they're not...
Nothing else matters.
Because the decisions have already been made. The Commission, who are, a tight cabal of coterie, have already decided what is going to happen and what the democratic will of the people is.
And here I was thinking of making an existentialist point. But no, you're very much right.
Well, you can make the existentialist point if you wish.
No, I don't want to depress people anymore.
That's all right. How considerate. And it's exactly the same now. Of course, you still get the odd based Polish voice in the EU saying exactly what they're doing, and the chap is absolutely right.
Dear colleagues, the discussion here is not about the so-called Media Freedom Act, a label given by the European Commission to this regulation, but the Media Surveillance, Control and Censorship Act, which accurately describe the nature of this regulation. It is unacceptable that the European Commission claims to promote the media freedom while, in fact, this regulation opens the doors for journalists, their employers, and even their families to be subjected to surveillance and spying by the security agencies. As the shadow rapporteur in Libe for the ECR group, I table amendments aimed to eliminate the provisions that permit such spying and surveillance on journalists, but they were rejected by EPP, S&D, and Renew. Joseph Stalin said, and I quote, "The press is our party's sharpest and most powerful weapon." Clearly, under the leadership of Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission does not desire a free press, but rather a propaganda machine, which is tightly controlled and subjected to surveillance like it was in the Soviet Union. The dangerous precedent established by the so-called Media Freedom Act regulation will have unreceivable and devastating consequences for democracy and freedom of the speech throughout the European Union, which is why I ask the Parliament to heavily reject it.
I hope Ursula von der Leyen doesn't change her name to Political Potential. It's one of the theories about Pol Pot, about the name.
All right.
Yeah, because they were talking about Stalin and
yeah. There's just a few points to make on this, of course. One is that we have only ever seen high-handed authoritarian tactics come from the EU. But the other thing as well is that with the wave of populist growth in the political parties across Europe, now, of course, we all have our contentions with these populist parties and how much they're just simply seizing on the political capital of the moment and whether or not it's actually all charged by principle. And invariably, it just so happens that you just have to vote them in like you do in Italy, wait for them to screw you over and find out the hard way. But in other cases, it's more about the fact that, well, all of this apparatus is being set up by the European Commission and by all of these Europhiles in order to keep the populist threat at bay, so they can clamp down on populist media, so that they can, as we say, clamp down on the independent journalists, so that they can control the narrative, right? That's all it is. It's just about controlling the narrative and trying to obviously shape your perception of what's going on in Europe, which I needn't tell you isn't great. But also in making this, if these populist parties do get into power, or dare I suggest parties even more radical than that, then they are creating this entire apparatus that those parties will then be able to inherit and use against the people who created it in the first place.
I feel like the beauty of this is we've left the EU, but they're still speaking English, even though we're gone.
I did think about that.
Cultural victory, my friend.
Yeah, the eternal Anglo strikes again.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.